Alright, so I don't know which video I'm going to post first, this one or the one about the Suburban and the multitude of problems it's now having. But while I'm still trying to figure out what to do with that, I figured to come in here and work on the BMW a little bit. My schedule starting to get pretty hectic and I don't have a whole lot of time before I deploy. So in this video, I think what we're going to do is mount the fuel cell, which is in that box right there, and then the subframe, so I can get that out of the way. And then I can start measuring up what fittings I need to run the fuel lines all the way up forward. And then once that's done, I can actually drill holes in the aluminum that I had welded in here, and then get this mounted in the car finally. And then maybe also see if I can't install the transmission in the clutch. I don't know yet. We'll see. I haven't gotten that far. Not a lot of that is going to happen today because it's currently 2:45 p.m. and the sun will be going down here in about 3 hours. So I think we're going to do this first because it's in the way. It's also the easiest thing to do. Alright, so we kind of got it snugged in place there. It's not too difficult to do. It's a lot easier to do with either a second person or using a jack stand or something. But I'm a man of a single talent, and that one talent is making things way more difficult than they need to be. So now, we can take a tape measure, or not even, actually, before we even do that, we got to get this out of the box. So this is an Aeromotive 20-gallon fuel cell. And this has a single 340 Stealth in-tank fuel pump on it. I'm going to assume that that is going to be our return. Oh, there's a dead fly. Okay, yeah, so this is our outlet. So we got an 8AN outlet, which means I'm going to have to convert this fuel rail to a -8, because this is currently a -6, but it's a simple matter of just taking off this ORB fitting and then swapping over to a -8. Let's write it down so I don't forget it. Okay, so we need a -8 ORB fitting, or AN to ORB fitting for the frame rail, or not for the frame rail, for the fuel rail. And I've already got a whole bunch of -8 line. I'm going to set the camera down and I'm going to get this thing out of here. Alright, so I got it out of the box and then I went ahead and labeled what each one of the fittings was for. So these two are rollover vents. This is the fuel return. I think I spelled fuel wrong. I spelled fuel wrong. And then this is the outlet. Alright, so now we're going to take our measuring tape. And we're going to measure. So we got 24 inches by 20 inches. Alright, so we got the spare, this opening where the spare tire used to be at, which is from frame rail to frame rail. Actually, let's not do frame rail to frame rail. Seems like a bad idea. Alright, so from opening to opening, it's about 27 1/4. And this is 18. So, alright, so this will fit in here. So we got to cut 2 inches off of here, which I might just be able to drill out these spot welds and just remove this panel. I think we should be good. Alright, I'm going to think about how we're going to orient this, and then I'll get back to you guys when I got a plan. What I'm going to do, or what I'm going to try to do, is because this stud, or from these studs, on both sides are exactly 24 inches apart and the tank is 24 inches wide. I think I'm going to take a little bit of material off of this, maybe about 1/4 inch or so, just so we got a little bit of room there on these four, and then that'll give us the width that we need, and then I can use these bolts as studs to hold the tank in. But I'm gonna need some like stainless angle iron or something, so I can just put it on there. And that is going to be what allows us to hold the tank up side to side. Anyway, so front to back, however, because this is only 18 inches wide or long, and the tank is 20 inches long, I'm not really 100% sure what I'm going to be able to do. What I'm thinking right now is that I just cut from here back and then all the way along here to this one, and that'll give me about 1.25 inches, and then up here I've got about 1.25 inches too. But then there's a structural piece that goes here, and it kind of follows this bend a little bit. So I'm not really 100% sure how I'm going to get around that. Kind of get it figured out as we go. This would have been a lot easier if I just paid somebody to do it, but that would have been no fun. So wish there was a little bit more space up here. That'd have been great, but there isn't, so make do. Absolute worst case scenario, what we could do is just get another OEM tank and just use that. I don't really want to, because I have this one obviously, but if we need to, then we're gonna need to. All right, so I'm gonna start planning this out. I'll get back to you guys when I actually start like doing the work. Okay guys, I think I figured out how I'm gonna make this work. So like I've already mentioned, the distance between here and here is 24 inches. The tank is 24 inches. So I think we're gonna come in here and take about 1/4 inch off, which will give us that much space between the bolts on all 4 sides, or at least on these 2 sides. This one's gonna be kind of difficult to do because it's on a corner, but I'll make it work. And then these ones as well. So the distance between here and here is 18 inches. So I need to find 2 inches, which I think I just did, because the distance between this rail that's right here is about 1.5 inches. We might need to cut these studs off here to make this work, because that's a little under 1.5 inches. Just for expediency's sake, we'll call that 1.5 inches, and then 1.5 inches here. So I think if we cut this shelf off to this rail and then cut a little bit off of this stud here, we should have enough to make the tank fit. Worst case scenario, we can just cut this whole thing off, because that'll buy us another 1.5 inches, roughly. So I think that's what we're gonna go ahead and do. I'm gonna try and find a light source, because it's kind of hard to see back here. And then I'm gonna get to cutting. Gotta mark 1/4 inch on these, and then cut it. Also, I'm gonna need to get some more cutoff wheels, because this is my last one. All right, so the lines aren't perfect, but I think they'll do good enough for what it is that I'm trying to get done here. I found that grinders work better when you actually plug them in. Alright, so I got these cut down. I took a little bit more off than I wanted to. This one's not even straight, but it should be fine. That should give us the space that we need, at least until I cut this, which I think I'm about to go do. But the camera's in the way, so I'm gonna get this cut, and then I will get back to you guys, let you know how it went. Almost lit my legs on fire a couple times. Trying to get out of here now. Alright, so I've been grinding along this edge here to try and get the fuel tank to fit. So I've got most of it down, but I think the rest of it I'm going to have to do with a like a grinding wheel, not a cutoff wheel. So I'm going to go ahead. Also, these, just like I thought previously, these are two separate panels. So once I do have this done, I'm going to have to come in here and hopefully my absolutely garbage welding skills are going to be good enough to at least tack along here. So that way it doesn't rust from the inside and then cause me more work down the road. Because if that happens, then I'm going to have to pull this whole thing off, which might still be the plan. I would like for that to be the main goal. But if not, if I have to take it out and then just cover this with like a piece of flat bar or something, then we'll do that. But for right now, this is going pretty well. So I got the fuel tank back from the welder. So we got this angle iron on it, excuse me, on both sides. Also got the bung in the valve cover, but unfortunately, one of my lifters is loose. Yeah, it's not supposed to do that. It's supposed to do that, not. So I'm gonna continue fitting this up, and then I'll get back to you guys once the fuel tank is set in there, and I got a plan moving forward as to whether or not we're gonna have to remove this piece or if I can get it to fit in there with it in. All right, guys. So I finished cutting it, and unfortunately, we're still quite a ways away from having it fit properly, even with it sitting all the way back. Let me get the light in there. Sitting all the way back on top of the studs. So now, I don't know what we're gonna do. Probably gonna have to. I don't know what we're gonna do. Probably gonna have to cut the frame, or at least this part of it coming along here. What I might try and do is just pull this panel up. Actually, that's not gonna work. The problem right now is that I cut all the way to this frame rail right here, so this is all a smooth line going across here. So there's not really any more room to move it. So now, I'm kind of at a loss. So I'm gonna go do some research, see what other people have done, see what the best thing to do moving forward is. The cheapest one, or not the cheapest one, but the easiest would be to cut the frame rail and then just notch it. But if I do that, that won't be until after the cage is installed, because I don't want to do a whole bunch of bracing just to keep the shape. I'd rather just have the cage installed and then use that as the brace. I'm gonna go do some reading, figure out what I should do. I will get back to you momentarily. All right, I don't really remember where I left off because it's been about a week or so, but I have a couple of different ideas as to what to do about the fuel cell not fitting. When I took my measurement, I went from here all the way to up here, and that was a little over 20 inches, which is what I needed. So I cut all the way to this cross member here to give me the right length that I needed, but unfortunately it starts to curve like right about here on both sides, and the distance from here to here is obviously not the same as it is from here to here. So I got two options. The first one is I can just cut a straight line that follows along here all the way up to about here, and then cut this section of cross member out and then just push it back in a little bit. Wouldn't be super easy to do. Or the other option, which would be easier but more expensive, would be just to get a physically smaller fuel cell, because this one right here, this one is a 20-gallon fuel tank. I don't really need a 20-gallon fuel tank. Those are the options. But I do have all the fittings to connect this to the engine, which is what we're going to be doing here momentarily. But we got to do a little bit of a detour, because when I took the cylinder head off to get the fitting welded on the head, I noticed that this lifter had collapsed, so we need to try and fix that. So it's been sitting a couple times, or it's been sitting a couple days with PB Blast, trying to hopefully knock it loose, but that has not worked. So I ended up having to go get some screw extractors. So we're gonna, these two right here are stripped out, so we gotta remove those, and then we gotta actually pull the head and then try and get that rocker to come loose, which is gonna require pulling the fuel rails and the intake and the steam vent kit, which is, it's a lot of stuff that I want to do, but we got to do it because I've knocked on that with a hammer a couple of times. It's not really working. So I'm going to pull these oil lines off so I can get the tank out of the way, and then I'm going to pull the head. It's not really much else we can do. All right, so we're going to try this one first. This is a number 3, which I think is for this size. So we're going to go wrong way. Alright, so we're gonna try this out and see how it works. I hope I don't have to break out the welder, because that would be incredibly unfortunate. But we'll see how this works. You know, it helps when it spins in the right direction. I'm gonna try the next size up. It appears my drill has finally stopped working, so I had to break out the electric one. Oh, that didn't work. So try and get the other one out before I break out the welder and possibly ruin my engine. Oh, that didn't work either, so. That's fun. Okay guys, so it's been a couple days and it has been an absolute ride to get all of these bolts out. So these 4 came out with no problems. So these 4 are just fine. These 4, on the other hand, decided they wanted to get kind of crazy. So I ended up having to drill some of them out. This one came out the easiest out of all of them. So I had to get a little crazy with some of them. Ended up drilling through it just so that way the extractor, which broke, more on that in a second. And this one, this is the one that actually caused the extractor to break, and as you can tell, there's not a whole lot left because I ended up taking a Dremel to it and grinding the head off until it broke free. But this is not the first extractor, this is the second, because the first one, when I was trying to remove this one, which is this one that I had to grind off, it's pulling the, or not this one, excuse me, this one, or this one, it's one of these two, it's this one. Because as I was pulling the bolt out, and the extractor decided it wanted to follow suit, and then slid all the way down there. So now, extractor's in there, which meant that I had to go get another one, and then ended up breaking. So there's that. Now I got 4 bad bolts. I do have 8 new ones, so I might just replace all of them, but these 4 are still good. So now I can remove the cylinder head. I already did the steam vent, so I can pull the intake and the exhaust, and then should be able to pull the head, and then fix this one lifter, because this has been quite the detour. It's been like 4 or 5 days I've been trying to get out those 4 bolts. So I'm gonna get some tools to set up, and see you guys in a moment. All right, we're gonna take the exhaust off because it's easy, and I don't want to struggle with something right now. It'd be very disheartening. I realize it's probably better if I don't use the impact on these ones. Now that they're all loose, I can use the impact. Okay, so in the last couple of minutes I have somehow managed to lose an exhaust bolt and discovered that we left a paper towel in one of the intake runners. So it's actually a good thing we ended up taking this out. But I am going to take this opportunity to clean all this dirt out of this valley. Alright, that's probably good enough. So next, I gotta pull this back off, so I need access to that nut. Alright, so now I gotta go gather some more tools and remove that. So I'll see you guys in a second. And to think that this entire thing started because I wanted to put a bung in a valve cover. There's the extractor that fell in there. Can't really see it super well, but there's some metal shavings in there too from the whole drilling process. And this one is our collapsed one. So I'm gonna see if I can't get this metal out without having to disassemble the entire engine, and we'll see what happens. I'll get back to you guys. Alright guys, so I'm here at my bench, what's available on my bench anyway, with the lifter in question. And as you can see, this one, if I can, is sitting about a 3/8 of an inch below that snap ring, whereas this one is pressed up against it. So I don't see anything in there. I ran a scribe around there just to make sure that there's nothing caught on the side. Nothing happened. So now I'm just gonna smack this on a bench real quick. And look at that. It came back up. So all of that work just to do that, but as a test to make sure that this is good now, what we can do is get a spare push rod and then just push on both of them to make sure that they actuate properly. Okay, so that one is doing what it's supposed to. And flip it over, do the other one, and that one is now moving freely. So I don't know why these collapsed. Should probably soak these in oil overnight again, just to be safe. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. All right, well I'm gonna get this engine put back together, and then we can move on to today's regularly scheduled program, which was supposed to be the fuel system. All right, so once you've freed up your lifter, you can just set it in some oil. And if you don't have a dedicated Tupperware, you can just use one of these fast food cups. And just make sure that it's tall enough to actually fit the whole lifter in there. I'm kind of pushing it. I should have cut this one just a little bit taller. And then just soak it in oil for a little while. This is just some Valvoline 2050 VR1. This is a little bit thicker than I'm actually going to be running, but this is what I happen to have on hand right now, so it's just what I'm going to use. So while that's sitting, I'm going to come back maybe half an hour or so. Take one of these push rods and just push down on the plungers just to fill it with oil, make sure everything in there is fresh and good, and then I'm going to get the engine put back together. Alright, so it's the next day. I got the engine back together, and now we can get back on to doing what we're going to do, which is the fuel system. And man, our race car part's expensive. This box of fittings right here was, by itself, was like $200. I also got 20 feet of -8 AN line. I got another 20 feet coming in that should be here today, so hopefully I've got enough. And then there's another -8 45 for the fitting. But I got a bunch of ORB and AN lines, so let's try getting this thing together. I don't really know how I'm gonna do this, but because the fuel cell issues that we were having, I think I'm just going to mock that up there in the back, just so that way I can run the lines, and those are gonna be probably not gonna sit in the back, because then it's gonna be longer than they need to be. I might throw it there in the back seat, or where the back seat used to be. Alright, so now that that is mocked up into place, I'm going to start running the supply line. So in order to do that, actually, you know what? Let me get back to you in a minute. I'm going to erase this and then kind of draw it out so I know what I'm doing. Okay, so I've kind of got it drawn out here in kind of a crude form, and then I got all the fittings laid out. So we'll see if I can't make any sense of this. So here we've got our tank and then our supply. So our supply is a -8 female. So I couldn't find any 90-degree female AN fitting, so I just got a standard male one and then a male-to-male adapter or connector, essentially. So we're gonna go -8 to a 90. It's gonna take us to our Y fitting here, because we have dual rail input, or we have dual fuel rails, excuse me, which goes into a single regulator, which is what was suggested by Aeromotive. So it's gonna split off. And then we've got two 45 ORBs, which go into the back of either fuel rail. And then from there, it's going to come out the front of the fuel rails. And then it's going to go into these two, which is then going to be the regulator, which is right there. And then we're going to have our single output, which is going to come all the way back to our -8 fitting. And this should be everything. I've got 3 of these, but it was just kind of a little confusing to look at with it all up here. So the first thing we're going to do is probably measure out how much I actually need. I don't really know where. I think I'm probably going to put these two in first, actually, because I don't know where I'm going to want to put this. Because once I go to actually install the engine in the car, this is going to have to be under the trans tunnel. So it's probably going to be around where that circle right there is. Maybe a little bit. It's gonna be in that general area. We'll have to see where everything lines up with the bell housing and whatnot. Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure something out here. So I'm gonna put these two on first. Alright, now the question becomes, where am I going to put the fuel regulator? I think what probably would have been smarter would have been have the supply come in from here and then come in from the front, and then we could just put the regulator in the back. Might do that actually, but then I would need 2 fittings that I don't currently have. Well, we're gonna have to make do for now. So now start measuring out some AN line. All right, so I'm starting to overthink things. So I think I'm just gonna start working, and then we'll see what happens, see what I can get done. Alright, so that's this hose made. This is going to go from the fuel rail to the Y. I'm going to get a couple more of these hoses made up. I'll get back to you guys here in a little bit. Alright, so I got the supply side done. So we've got the single line coming from the tank, coming through this hole in the firewall, and then into the Y, which then tees off into both sides of the fuel rail. So now we're going to go from both sides of this fuel, or from the other side of the fuel rail, to the regulator, which I think for now I'm just going to put up here. Just let it sit. Should be fine up there. And then once I go to actually install the engine, I'm going to have a couple of 180s. So I'm going to bring the supply in from the front and then have the return be on the back so I can mount the regulator to the firewall. So actually I realized I just left the regulator inside. Alright, so I got my regulator. This is just an Aeromotive one. It's got a mechanical connection, or a connection for a mechanical fuel pump gauge on here. I think I'm going to swap that one out for an electrical one in the distant future. But for right now, I'm going to set it right there. set it right there, and then we're just gonna have these two just come up to here on both sides, and then we're just gonna get the other one to go straight back. So I'm gonna get those going. Probably just gonna do those off camera though. And I'm sure you guys seen the how the process goes with making the AN lines, and just continuing to film that doesn't really seem like it's worth the hassle. So I'm gonna get those lines made, and I'll get back to you in a second. So I got the fuel system all hooked up, got the regulator on there. These two ended up being slightly different lengths because this was actually the last bit of that 20-foot roll that I had. And then this just happened to be like a small piece that I had lying around that I got from my trip back up to Alaska. So we got the line coming in, tees off, comes into both fuel rolls. It comes out, up, and then into the regulator, and then back to the tank. So that's all good. And then I went and got the oil system all hooked back up. So that's all back on there. So the deal with the work I did to get the lifter, to fix the lifter, because I'm not really 100% positive that I was able to get all of the metal shavings out, what I think I'm going to do is fill this with oil and then use the pump on like a drill and then just flush the entire engine with some like cheap oil or something. I don't know, I'm just going to go with something like really cheap probably, and then run the pump off of like a drill for like 5 minutes or so that way all of what I did miss, if I missed anything, like I said, I'm pretty sure I got almost all of it, or all of it, if not all of it. But if there's anything left, the idea is that it's going to get caught in the oil filter and in that one. So that one's a 75 micron. I don't remember what that one is. That's just a K&N filter. So hopefully it gets caught in those, and then everything in here is good. So I'm still waiting for the other section of 20-foot hose, because that's got the fitting that I need for this one. So once that's here, I can finally route this down and then have that all good to go, and then we'll have 2/3 of what we need to get this engine running. Because right now we've got oil, we got fuel, and the last one to do is the electronics, and I'm not really looking forward to doing it. But I think I'm gonna call the video here and get this edited and then put up. So I am quickly running out of time with my schedule at work. So I will see you guys in the next one.